So apparently there's a new king of low light out on the market, and it's mirrorless, is that right? Okay, so first of all, check out the link in the caption below, and you can jump over to Granger.com to check out the images before they've been compressed to death by YouTube. You can also check out the workshops page and see where I'm traveling in the world and sign up to the newsletter. Okay, let's jump into this showdown. So the two things that are really getting people excited about the Sony a7s are its video capabilities and its low light performance. Let's take a quick look around this one.
This is the third in Sony's full-frame A7 lineup. After the A7, then the A7R with a 36 megapixel sensor, now the A7s. This is the most expensive of the three. It does full HD recording and it's technically capable of 4K, but only outputting it to another really expensive box. It won't record it to a card. It's got a big 3-inch rear screen that's tilting. Of course, it has peaking and all of those different modern features you expect from a mirrorless camera. The EVF has 100% coverage, the shutter speed is from 30 seconds to 1/8000th, and it'll sync with flash at up to 1/250th of a second.
Let me cast your mind back to 2007 when Nikon released their first ever full-frame camera, the D3. At a time when everyone else was focused on ramping up megapixels, they focused on keeping them down but improving high ISO performance. It and the D700 went on to be classics. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, it's a simple mathematics thing that if you have heaps of pixels in a small space, every photo site has to be tiny. So if you have less pixels on a full frame sensor, the photo sites are bigger, and all other things being even, simplifying it a lot, generally bigger photo sites mean they're more capable of catching light and they'll perform better in high ISO situations. That is the same in film. When you had really fine-grained film like Fuji Velvia 50, it had a really low light catching capability. If you wanted to go up to a high-speed film like 1600, it had big physical grains of on the film, which were more capable of catching light, but they lost some detail. Of course, technology plays a big part in it too. Now, 30 megapixel cameras are performing better in high ISO than 5 megapixel cameras were 10 or 15 years ago. And that's what makes the a7s so interesting. It's also full frame and 12 megapixel like the D700 and D3, but it's got 7 years of technology on them. So it should perform really, really well. Let's check out the high ISO performance comparing it to what was the king of ISO, the Nikon DF.
Now, I can't imagine anyone's going to buy the a7s to shoot still life like this, but I'm a photographer, not a scientist, so I just wanted to set up something simple with tones, colors, and texture for you to check out and see how they perform that I could replicate on both cameras, show you side by side, and then you can check them out. You can also check out the link in caption below to see higher res ones over at Granger.com. So jumping in, there we are at 800, of course, both quite clean, 1600. As we go up through these, keep an eye on not just the grain, but what's happening to the colors and tones and the kind of depth of detail you're getting through the shots. Here we're already up into crazy territory, but you can see that the a7s at the bottom is performing much, much better. As we go up to even 200,000, still a whole lot better. And then it goes on to an extra stop up to over 400,000, and it's still looking probably better than the other one at 200. Have to remind you, at those levels, it's still pretty terrible. You don't want to use that. This video footage was taken at ISO 1600 in a really dark restaurant with the Zeiss Otis 85mm. Now, it's only 1600, but on my D800 camera, that would be looking a real mess already. So this is, it looks like it could be at a base ISO if it were my D800. These next shots were taken on a back street of the little kitty cat. These are at 16,000 ISO. Now the white balance is off. I left it on auto, but the files are pretty clean. It looks good. These next two shots were taken at 160,000 ISO, and you can see the noise just dancing around in the highlights there on the top right hand corner, but this was shot in near dark conditions. Then looking up into the tree where you don't have extreme highlights and dark contrast, it actually looks pretty good, and this was at exactly 160,000. It wasn't on high auto ISO. That was someone locking their car. Then these were shot on auto ISO, again with the Otis, the way it renders the backgrounds and the way this camera handles the low light, it's really something quite beautiful.
Okay, so looking at those files, they kind of speak for themselves. This is performing astonishingly well in high ISO performance. The thing that a lot of people think of for high ISO, those little grainy bits, really take a long time to start showing up, and it's really well controlled. I don't think this compares to things like the a7R or the Nikon D800, D810 in terms of color and tonal range, but in terms of high ISO, there's no other camera I've tested that performs as well as this one. I still want to remind you that even though there are situations where it's so handy to have high ISO capabilities, you are losing color and tonal range as you go up through the ISOs. Even going from the base ISO to like 1600 or 3200, you're throwing away a lot of information. You can click that link to go through and see the video I did explaining the real downsides to high ISO. Thanks to Sony Australia for loaning me this one as I'm rushing out the door to Photokina. I'll definitely be in touch to put it through its paces as an overall system beyond the high ISO aspect. Leave me a comment below, tell me what you're shooting with and what's the highest ISO you're comfortable shooting with for stills and video. Leave me any other questions and comments. I'll see you soon.